All right, so we're diving into some pretty heavy stuff today. You guys shared Conrad Reicher's book with us. Oh, shit, actually. The No-Nonsense Guide to Be. And let me tell you, this guy Reicher, he doesn't hold back. He really just goes right at it.
Yeah.
Talking about men's rights and,
Yeah.
all the stuff surrounding that in the world today.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a world that feels like it's kind of lost its way a little bit.
Yeah.
We're talking about things like the impact of feminism and
Yeah.
the rise of globalism and sanitation, the decline of traditional family values, the whole nine yards. And Riker's got some pretty strong opinions about how we got here and what we need to do about it.
Yeah, what's really interesting about Riker's work is this kind of central thesis that he has. Western civilization, with its Judeo-Christian foundation, is under attack. And he really sees that as the root cause of a lot of the problems that men are facing today.
Okay, so let's break that down a little bit. What exactly does he mean by that? When he says that Western civilization is under attack.
Well, he's talking about the core values that have shaped Western societies for centuries, right? Things like individual liberty, personal responsibility, the rule of law, these kind of fundamental principles that have been the bedrock of Western societies. Riker argues that those are being eroded by forces like radical feminism and unfettered immigration, and kind of a globalist agenda that seeks to undermine national sovereignty.
Okay, so he's saying that these values that have been so important to the West are now being chipped away at by these different forces. And one of the things that he focuses on a lot is the family unit, the nuclear family. And he argues that that's been really weakened in recent decades.
Yeah, he sees the nuclear family as the bedrock of a healthy society. And he argues that it's been weakened by decades of feminist attacks on traditional gender roles and the rise of single-parent households.
And he ties that back to this decline of Judeo-Christian values, right? He's saying that the erosion of these values has created this kind of moral vacuum, and that's led to a decline in personal responsibility and a rise in all sorts of social dysfunction.
Exactly. He argues that that moral vacuum has made it easier for radical ideologies to take hold, particularly in institutions like academia and the media and the entertainment industry. He believes that these institutions have been captured by a worldview that is hostile to traditional masculinity and seeks to undermine the very values that have made Western civilization so successful.
So how does all of this then relate back to this idea of the war on men that Riker talks about?
Well, Riker believes that men have essentially become the scapegoats for society's ills. He argues that men are being unfairly demonized and that their contributions to society are being ignored or downplayed. He sees this war on men manifesting in everything from divorce courts that are biased against fathers to a culture that celebrates female empowerment at the expense of male identity.
And this is a really interesting concept that he talks about called the unmen. And he's basically describing men who have been, in his words, emasculated by modern society. He paints this picture of men who are passive and indecisive and lacking in purpose. And they're kind of adrift in this world that no longer values these traditional masculine traits like strength, stoicism, a sense of responsibility.
Right, and he blames the rise of the unmen on those very factors we've been talking about, right? The decline of Judeo-Christian values, the attack on the traditional family, the demonization of masculinity by feminist ideology and the media. He argues that boys are being raised in a culture that tells them that their natural instincts are toxic and that they need to suppress their masculinity.
So given all of that, what does Riker propose as a solution to this problem? How do we combat this so-called war on men and help men reclaim their masculinity?
Well, that's something that we're going to dive into a lot more deeply. But Riker is a big proponent of what he calls reclaiming the masculine. Okay. He argues that men need to rediscover the virtues of strength, courage, discipline, honor. He emphasizes the importance of physical fitness, mental toughness, and a sense of purpose.
He talks a lot about the importance of having a mission in life.
Yeah.
Something that gives you that sense of direction and purpose.
Exactly. He believes that men are hardwired to be providers and protectors, and that they need to find a way to channel those instincts in a positive and constructive way. So finding something you're passionate about, something that gives your life meaning, and allows you to make a positive impact on the world.
One of the things that really stood out to me in the book was his emphasis on Stoicism, this ancient philosophy that emphasizes self-control, rationality, and virtue. And he sees it as a really powerful tool for men to navigate the challenges of modern life and to develop that inner strength and resilience that they need to thrive in a world that can often feel pretty chaotic and hostile.
Yeah, Stoicism is all about focusing on what you can control and accepting what you can't. It's about developing a mindset that allows you to remain calm and rational in the face of adversity. And Riker believes that this can be really helpful for men in overcoming feelings of anger, frustration, resentment that often result from feeling like they're under attack.
He also talks about the importance of
Yeah.
building those strong relationships with other men, finding mentors who can offer guidance and support, and then in turn becoming mentors themselves to help younger men kind of navigate the challenges that they're facing.
He believes that men need a strong sense of brotherhood and camaraderie to really thrive. They need to support each other, hold each other accountable, help each other become the best versions of themselves.
So Riker's painting a pretty, I don't know if bleak is the right word, but
Yeah.
it's certainly a challenging picture of the state of masculinity in the modern world.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a sense of urgency in his message.
But he is offering this path forward, a way for men to reclaim their strength and their purpose and their place in society.
Exactly. It's a call to action. It's a challenge to men to reject the victim mentality, to embrace their masculinity, and to fight for a better future for themselves, their families, and their communities.
So we've got this kind of broad overview of Riker's central thesis, this idea that Western civilization and men's place within it is under attack. But he also gets into some really specific issues that are hot-button topics right now. One of those is immigration. And Riker, he doesn't mince words here. He calls mass immigration a potential threat to national identity and cultural cohesion.
Yeah, he argues that uncontrolled immigration can lead to a whole host of problems. Everything from cultural clashes and social unrest to economic strain and a dilution of national identity. And he's not just talking about these abstract concepts, right? He points to specific examples like the ongoing migration crisis in Europe, where he argues that the influx of people from vastly different cultures has led to increased social tensions and a weakening of national unity.
Now, it is interesting because he does acknowledge that immigration can be beneficial when it's done responsibly. In fact, he actually advocates for a merit-based immigration system, similar to what they have in Canada and Australia,
Right.
where they prioritize skilled workers who are willing to assimilate and contribute to society.
Exactly. He believes that that kind of approach would benefit both the receiving country and the immigrants themselves. It would ensure that immigrants are equipped to succeed economically and socially, and that they share the values and traditions of their new home.
And he connects this back to his broader argument about the decline of Western civilization, right? He sees uncontrolled immigration as part of this larger trend that he calls globalism, which he argues is eroding national sovereignty and undermining traditional values.
He paints a pretty bleak picture of a world where global institutions are dictating everything, from trade policies to immigration laws, leaving nation-states with very little power to control their own destinies. And he believes that this globalist agenda is often driven by multinational corporations and wealthy elites who benefit from open borders and cheap labor, while ordinary working people bear the brunt of the economic and social consequences.
But even when he's talking about these things that seem very negative and pessimistic, he does offer solutions. So, for example, when he critiques globalism, he calls for a return to nationalism, not in the sense of like xenophobia or isolationism, but in the sense of putting the interests of one's own citizens first.
Right. He believes that nation-states are best equipped to protect the rights and interests of their citizens, and that we need to resist this trend towards global governance, which he sees as unaccountable and undemocratic.
Okay, so we've talked about immigration, we've talked about globalism. Another really big issue that he sees as central to the fight for men's rights is free speech. He's incredibly concerned about what he calls the erosion of free speech and the rise of cancel culture.
Yeah, he argues that we live in a world where people are increasingly afraid to express their opinions for fear of being attacked or shamed or silenced. And he points to examples of individuals who have been canceled for expressing views that are deemed politically incorrect, even if those views are based on scientific evidence or deeply held religious beliefs.
And he sees this as a very dangerous trend. He says it stifles debate, limits intellectual diversity, and undermines the very foundations of a free society.
He's particularly critical of what he sees as the outsized influence of social media companies, which he argues have become the arbiters of truth and have the power to censor dissenting voices.
He also sees this erosion of free speech as connected to what he calls the therapeutic culture, where feelings and emotional validation are prioritized over facts and objective truth. And he argues that this culture has created a generation of people who are hypersensitive to any perceived offense, and who are quick to shut down any conversation that makes them uncomfortable.
And he believes that hypersensitivity is dangerous because it prevents us from having honest and difficult conversations about important issues.
So we've got this attack on free speech, But he also points to a more concrete institution that he sees as under attack, and that's the military. He argues that a strong military is essential for national defense and for maintaining global stability.
He's very critical of what he sees as a growing trend of anti-military sentiment, particularly on the left, and argues that the sentiment is misguided and dangerous.
And he draws a connection between the decline of traditional masculinity and the declining respect for the military. He argues that the same forces that are emasculating men are also undermining the values of courage and honor and sacrifice that are really at the heart of military service.
He believes that we need to restore a culture of respect for the military, and that starts with instilling in young men a sense of patriotism and a willingness to serve their country.
And then hand in hand with that defense of the military, he also very passionately defends patriotism.
He sees patriotism as a unifying force that brings people together and inspires them to work for the common good, and he believes that we need to reclaim patriotism from those who would use it to promote division and intolerance.
So it's clear that he sees all of these issues: immigration, globalism, free speech, the military, patriotism. He sees them all as interconnected, and he argues that they all point to this larger crisis of Western civilization.
He believes that we are at a crossroads and that we need to make a choice. Do we continue down this path of decline and surrender to the forces that are undermining our values and our way of life, or do we fight back, reclaim our heritage, and rebuild a strong and vibrant Western civilization?
And Riker's book is really a call to arms. It's urging men to be on the front lines of that fight. But beyond these kind of societal issues, Riker also delves into what he sees as a more personal crisis affecting men, and that's the rise of what he calls the unman.
Right.
He argues that we're witnessing the rise of a new type of man who has been emasculated by modern society, and he blames this phenomenon on a variety of factors, including feminist ideology, media portrayals, and a culture that often denigrates traditional masculine traits.
And he argues that these unmen are passive, indecisive, lacking in purpose. They've lost touch with their masculinity, and this has had a negative impact on their lives, their relationships, and their overall well-being. They're addicted to video games, pornography, social media. They're afraid of commitment, afraid of hard work, afraid of taking risks. They're content to be consumers rather than creators, to be followers rather than leaders.
And Riker argues that this is not just a problem for men themselves, but it's a problem for society as a whole. He believes that the emasculation of men has led to a decline in leadership, a decline in innovation, and a decline in overall societal well-being.
He argues that we need men who are strong and confident and capable, men who are willing to step up and lead, to protect and provide, to build and create.
So if Riker's painting such a kind of bleak picture of the state of modern masculinity, what does he propose as a solution? How do men reclaim their masculinity in a world that seems to be actively working against them?
Well, that's what we're going to explore in the next part of our deep dive. Riker offers a number of solutions for men to reclaim their masculinity. He emphasizes the importance of physical fitness, mental toughness, and discipline. He encourages men to embrace those traditional masculine virtues like courage, honor, and responsibility. He sees these as essential qualities for men to thrive in a world that often seems to be pushing against them.
All right, so stay tuned. We'll be right back. After a quick break to dive deeper into Riker's solutions for reclaiming masculinity. So we left off talking about Riker's pretty strong defense of the military and patriotism. But let's shift gears a little bit now and dive into another one of his core arguments. And that's his defense of capitalism. He really goes all in on capitalism and is very critical of socialism.
Yeah, he sees capitalism as the economic system that best promotes individual liberty and economic growth. He argues that it allows for innovation and creativity, and that it rewards hard work and risk-taking. He contrasts that with socialism, which he sees as a system that stifles innovation and leads to economic stagnation.
He's not blind to the problems with capitalism, though.
Yeah.
Right? He acknowledges that there can be downsides like income inequality, but he argues that those downsides are far outweighed by the benefits.
Exactly. He believes that capitalism ultimately lifts more people out of poverty than any other economic system, and he points to the historical track record to support that argument.
He really sees it as a system that empowers individuals to take control of their own lives, to create their own wealth, and to pursue their own happiness.
Yeah, and he believes that economic freedom is essential for all other forms of freedom. He argues that when the government controls the economy, it ultimately controls every aspect of people's lives.
Okay, so that's capitalism. Now let's talk about another one of Riker's really big concerns, and that's the state of the family structure. He is a huge proponent of the traditional nuclear family.
Yeah, he sees the nuclear family as the foundation of a healthy society. He argues that children raised in stable two-parent homes are more likely to succeed in life. They're more likely to be emotionally well-adjusted. They're less likely to engage in criminal activity.
And he's very concerned about what he sees as a war on fatherhood.
He argues that fathers are being marginalized and demonized in modern society, and that this is having a devastating impact on children. He believes that fathers play a vital role in child development. They provide discipline, they provide guidance, they serve as role models for their sons, and they teach their daughters how to interact with men in a healthy way.
And he sees this attack on fatherhood as part of a larger attack on traditional masculinity.
He argues that the same forces that are trying to emasculate men are also trying to undermine the role of fathers in the family.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about Riker's views on Western civilization, on immigration, globalism, free speech, the military, patriotism, capitalism, socialism, and the family structure. And as you can see, he's got some pretty strong opinions on all of these issues.
He's definitely a provocative thinker, and not everyone is going to agree with everything he says.
But what I appreciate about him is that he's not afraid to challenge conventional wisdom. He's willing to ask tough questions, and he's not afraid to offer solutions.
And even if you don't agree with everything he says, I think it's important to engage with his ideas, to think critically about the issues he raises, and to consider what we can do to address the challenges that he's identified.
Okay, so we spent the last 2 parts of this deep dive unpacking some really heavy stuff. You know, Riker's painted a pretty bleak picture of the world. He's talked about this war on men, the rise of the unmanned, this attack on Western civilization. It's a lot to process. But what I appreciate about him is that he doesn't just leave us there. He doesn't just leave us wallowing in despair. He offers a path forward. He offers a way for men to reclaim their strength and their purpose in a world that often feels hostile.
Exactly. He's not about complaining or playing the victim. He's about action. He's about taking responsibility for your own life and shaping your own destiny. And a big part of that, he argues, is rediscovering what it truly means to be a man.
Yeah, he talks about the need for men to embrace their natural instincts, you know, those hardwired drives, for competition, risk-taking, providing for, protecting those they care about. But he emphasizes that those instincts need to be channeled in a positive and constructive way.
He argues that modern society has created a kind of pressure cooker for men. You know, those natural instincts are still there, but they're often suppressed or distorted because they don't fit the mold of what's considered acceptable male behavior.
So instead of expressing those instincts in healthy ways, they can manifest in destructive ways, like aggression, recklessness, escapism. So what are some of the solutions that Riker offers for men to reclaim those instincts and channel them into something positive?
Well, he's a huge advocate for physical fitness, and not just for the physical benefits, but for the mental discipline and resilience it builds.
He sees it as almost like a metaphor, right? You're literally pushing your body to its limits. And that teaches you to push past your mental limits as well.
Exactly. And he connects this to the Stoic philosophy that he champions throughout the book. Stoicism is all about self-control, rationality, accepting what you can't control, while focusing on what you can. It's a philosophy that resonates with a lot of men because it's about taking responsibility for your own emotions and actions, not letting external circumstances dictate your inner state.
So it's about developing that inner strength, that resilience that's so essential for navigating the challenges of the modern world.
Exactly. It's about staying calm under pressure, not letting your emotions get the best of you, and always striving to become a better version of yourself.
He also emphasizes the importance of finding a mission in life.
He argues that too many men are just drifting through life without a clear sense of what they're striving for, and that lack of purpose can lead to a lot of unhappiness, frustration, even despair.
So he wants men to rediscover that sense of purpose, that drive to achieve something meaningful.
And he believes that mission can take many forms. It could be about building a successful business, becoming a skilled craftsman, raising a family, serving your community, any other endeavor that you feel passionately about.
And it doesn't stop there. He also talks about the importance of building strong relationships with other men, finding mentors who can offer guidance and support, and then becoming mentors themselves to younger men who are just starting out on their journey.
He believes that men need a strong sense of brotherhood and camaraderie to really thrive. They need to support each other, hold each other accountable, and help each other become the best versions of themselves.
He even encourages men to get involved in their communities, to become active citizens, to fight for the values they believe in. So he's really calling for men to step up and take responsibility for their own lives and for the world around them.
Exactly. He believes that men have a unique role to play in shaping the future, and that it's time for them to rise to the occasion.
Well, I have to say, after spending all this time with Riker's ideas, I'm feeling pretty inspired. He's definitely given us a lot to think about, a lot to chew on.
He's definitely a challenging thinker, and not everyone will agree with everything he says. But I appreciate that he forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world we live in. He challenges us to think critically, to question our assumptions, and to take responsibility for our own lives.
And ultimately, I think that's what makes actually, such a valuable book. It's a wake-up call, a call to action, a guide for men who are looking for a way to navigate the complexities of the modern world and to find their place in it.
So if you're feeling lost or confused or frustrated with the state of the world, I highly recommend giving Shit actually a read. It might just be the kick in the pants you need to start living a more meaningful and fulfilling life.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us on this journey through Conrad Riker's thought-provoking book. We hope you found it as engaging and insightful as we have.
And as always, we encourage you to read the book for yourself, to form your own opinions, and to continue the conversation.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep. Okay, so we spent the last two parts of this deep dive kind of unpacking some of these big ideas that Riker lays out in his book. We've talked about the war on men and the rise of the unmen and this attack on Western civilization, and it can feel pretty overwhelming, all these forces that are seemingly working against men. But the thing I appreciate about Riker is that he doesn't just leave us there feeling hopeless, right? Like, he offers some actual solutions, a way for men to reclaim their strength and their purpose, even in a world that can often feel pretty hostile.
That's right. He's not about complaining or playing the victim. He's all about action, taking control of your own life and really shaping your destiny. And a big part of that for him is rediscovering what it means to be a man.
Right, and he talks about the need for men to kind of embrace their natural instincts, those hardwired drives the guys have for competition, for risk-taking, for providing for and protecting the people they care about.
Yeah.
But he also emphasizes that those instincts need to be channeled, in a positive and constructive way.
He argues that modern society has kind of created this pressure cooker for men, right? Where these natural instincts are still there, but they're often suppressed or distorted because they don't fit the mold of what's considered acceptable male behavior.
So instead of those instincts being expressed in healthy ways, they can manifest in these destructive ways, right?
Yeah.
Like aggression or recklessness or escapism.
Exactly, and that's why Riker's solutions are so important.
So what are some of those solutions? What does he propose that men can actually do to kind of reclaim those instincts and channel them into something positive?
Well, one of the biggest things he advocates for is physical fitness. And not just for the physical benefits, of course, those are important, but he's really talking about the mental discipline and the resilience that it builds.
He almost sees it as like a metaphor, right? You're pushing your body to its limits, and in doing so, you're also learning to push past your mental limits.
Exactly. And he connects this to the Stoic philosophy, that he talks about throughout the book.
Yeah, Stoicism seems to be a really big part of his philosophy.
And it makes sense for a lot of guys. I mean, Stoicism is about self-control. It's about rationality. It's about accepting the things you can't control and focusing on the things that you can. It's about taking responsibility for your own emotions and actions, not letting outside circumstances dictate your inner state.
Right, so it's about developing that inner strength and resilience that you need to kind of weather the storms of life.
Yeah, it's about staying calm under pressure, not letting your emotions run wild, and always striving to become a better version of yourself. And that's a message that really resonates with a lot of men.
Another thing he talks about a lot is finding a mission in life. Something that gives you that sense of purpose and direction.
He says too many men are just drifting through life without a clear sense of what they're striving for. And that lack of purpose can lead to a lot of unhappiness, a lot of frustration, and even despair.
Right, so he's not just talking about career goals here. He's talking about something deeper. A reason for being, something that gets you out of bed in the morning and makes you feel like your life has meaning.
Exactly. It could be about building a business or becoming a skilled craftsman, or raising a family or serving your community. It could be any number of things. The key is to find something that you're passionate about, something that gives you that fire in your belly.
And it doesn't stop there.
Yeah.
He also talks about the importance of building strong relationships with other men. Finding mentors who can offer guidance and support, and then becoming mentors yourself to younger guys who are coming up and are maybe facing some of those same challenges that you've had to overcome?
He believes that men need that sense of brotherhood and camaraderie, right, to really thrive. It's about supporting each other, holding each other accountable, and helping each other become the best versions of themselves.
And he even encourages men to get involved in their communities, to be active citizens, to fight for the values they believe in, really step up and make a difference. So he's calling for men to kind of take responsibility for their own lives, but also for the world around them, right?
Absolutely. He sees men as having this unique role to play in shaping the future, and he's saying it's time for us to rise to the occasion.
Well, I got to say, after spending all this time with Riker's ideas, I'm feeling pretty inspired. He's definitely given us a lot to think about.
He's a challenging thinker, for sure, and not everyone's going to agree with everything he says.
Yeah.
But I think what I appreciate about him is that he forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world that we live in. He challenges us to think critically, to question our assumptions, and to take responsibility for our own lives.
And at the end of the day, I think that's what makes Shit actually such a valuable book. It's a wake-up call. It's a call to action. It's a guide for men who are looking for a way to navigate this complex world that we live in and to find their place in it.
So if you're feeling lost, if you're feeling confused, if you're feeling frustrated with the state of the world, I highly recommend checking out Shit, actually. It might just be the thing you need to kind of kickstart your journey towards a more meaningful and fulfilling life.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Well, I think that about wraps it up for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us on this journey through Conrad Riker's Shit, actually. We hope you found it as engaging and thought-provoking as we have.
And as always, we encourage you to read the book for yourself, form your own opinions, and keep the conversation going.
That's right. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.